감사합니다. 환영합니다.
Thank you. Good morning. I have to say I'm a diehard baseball fan, so I'm a bit sad to be here. I was just told that this is a former baseball stadium, and now it's a baseball stadium graveyard. Actually, I'm honored to be here. Thank you to SBS for inviting me here. It's somewhat embarrassing to be talking about digital innovation in Korea. Your mobile networks are faster than ours. They're better than ours. And there's a toilet in my hotel that has 9 buttons on it. In my country, we flush the toilet with a lever attached to a chain. It's called mechanics. I spent most of the past 15 years traveling around the world. I started as a freelance newspaper journalist, living in Eastern Europe, Russia, and Indonesia. That's me covering the tsunami in Banda Aceh in 2004. But I was never fully satisfied just with the written word, as much as I love to write. Sometimes I felt that words just weren't enough to convey the experiences that I was having overseas. I needed new tools to share what I was seeing. This was in 2005, and the Times was just starting a video unit. They were experimenting in video and hired me for a 3-month trial. But I knew it wouldn't be up to the Times if they were to continue doing video. It would be up to the users, to the world, to the audience. So I joined and quickly taught myself how to shoot and edit video. And for the next few years, I made a ton of really terrible videos. And then I moved to Pakistan and to Afghanistan, and later covering the Arab Spring. And I'm really glad that I learned how to use new technologies like a camera, because I met some remarkable people. That's me in 2009. I was the first journalist to discover Malala Yousafzai. She was still unknown to the world as a somewhat ordinary schoolgirl. And I made a documentary following her and her family for about 6 months on and off. The film put her on the world's radar. And this is really the only documentary footage that exists in the world of Malala before she was shot by the Taliban.
Malala's fellow students say her message has not been silenced.
I'm Adam Ellick, a reporter for the New York Times, and I knew Malala before she was a star. That's me in 2009, when I made 2 documentaries about her. It's the story of a young girl, her ambitious father, and the media, and the parts that we all played in her road to the Nobel and in the tragedy that almost took her life. After an 8-hour car ride, we finally arrived at their house. The kids ran in to check on their pet chickens, which the family left behind during the evacuation.
Our chicks are died.
Malala broke down. I suspect it was the culmination of months of anxiety, separation, and fear. And it was one of the few times when I was reminded that she's just a 12-year-old girl. Later that night, we sat down on the floor for dinner.
No, please, if once again you are ordered officially that you leave the city and go away, what will you do? You will only, just like last time, you will just cry and you will pick up your bag and baggage with your father and you will leave the city? You will resist to some extent. What do you think?
So, I will leave.
You will leave the city? Why?
Because they can kill us.
After what you've been through in these 3 months, you would never leave again? I'm asking you the question that you asked your daughter.
I can't say anything. I can't say anything. It's quite a difficult question. Not so simple.
So after a few years of reporting in places like Pakistan, I took a year off and studied at the MIT Media Lab and Disruptive Innovation at Harvard Business School. I wanted to better understand our audience and how technology is affecting journalism. When I returned to the Times, I heard about a small innovation team, and I quickly joined. And right away, I learned one really important thing. Our industry is changing really, really fast. This is a snapshot of just some of the headlines that were published during the 6 months that we researched on the innovation team. BuzzFeed was once known for cat videos, and now they're doing an investigative news. Business Insider didn't exist when I joined the Times, and now they've surpassed the Wall Street Journal in traffic. These headlines are only 18 months old, but they feel like they're from the Stone Age. You could make a slide like this every few months, and you still wouldn't be able to keep pace with our evolving industry. Some of you may have seen this. This is from 2005 in the Vatican. It's the funeral for Pope John Paul II. Here's the same place 8 years later, the first appearance of Pope Francis. Anybody see on the bottom right-hand corner of 2005, there's a flip phone. We call those people early adopters. This chart generated quite a lot of attention from our innovation report. It's the decline of the almighty homepage, traffic cut in half in just 2 years. If you sat in on one of our news meetings just a year or two ago, you would see department editors, like a sports editor and a politics editor, competing for space on that almighty homepage. But if one story is promoted and one story isn't promoted, that's a net loss for the entire newsroom. We live in an era where all stories can be promoted and distributed. And this may seem like our digital audience is shrinking, but it's not. People are finding new ways, back doors and side doors, to access our journalism. Check out our explosive growth on mobile. Page views more than doubled in 3 years. This year, more than 60% of our traffic came from a smartphone or tablet. 60%. Almost half of our audience is now mobile only. For the past 20 years, we've been trying to get used to a really simple fact, that the next generation of readers will never pick up a newspaper. And now, we're trying to get used to another not-so-simple fact. The next generation may never visit us on a desktop or a website. The news industry needed 20 years to disrupt. And mobile has needed just a few quick years to disrupt desktop. By the way, this guy is not a subscriber to the New York Times, just to clarify. It's a classic story of disruptive innovation. You've seen it before. The platform in decline is print, and it still generates the overwhelming majority of revenue. The growth is in digital, enabled by technological change. The challenge is that we're a 164-year-old newspaper, and we're in the process of becoming a digital media company. It's a journalistic challenge, it's a cultural challenge, it's a technological challenge, it's a financial challenge, and it's a really good reason to quit journalism tomorrow morning. But on a serious note, it's an exciting challenge. It's a euphoric moment to be a journalist. I can reach more readers than any previous generation of journalists. So we came together and formed this innovation team, and we did it the only way we know how to do anything. We treated it like a story. It's an investigation into the Times itself. It's fundamentally about two things: audience development and digital-first culture. And I'll break both of those down for you in a minute. But as many of you know, the report was meant to be secret. It was leaked about a year ago. A report that was created for 6 top editors has since been downloaded 2 million times. And the irony of the distribution has not been lost on us. It was our company, done by our journalists, it was our story, and BuzzFeed leaked it to the world. We've since heard of other companies around the world, from here in South Korea to Sweden and Germany and the UK, commissioning their own innovation reports. I'm often asked, why did this gain so much attention? And the answer, I think, is that newsrooms around the world were surprised that the New York Times faced the same challenges that they were facing. The challenges are universal, and people could relate to it. How did we do it? We interviewed more than 350 people at 50 companies. And not just newsrooms. We interviewed technologists and venture capitalists. One of my favorite interviews was with a credit card company on how they nurture loyalty among cardholders. I spent the first few weeks just interviewing news junkies. We went to their homes, we invaded their homes, and watched them in their pajamas as they read news on the iPad in bed. It was one of the most creepy moments of my life. By the end, it became very clear that no one has solved the media business model. No one's figured out how to save journalism in the digital age. But different players have solved pieces of the problem. BuzzFeed has mastered the art of social sharing. The Financial Times has ramped up its digital-first hiring efforts. And The Guardian has built a cohesive community around its content. The Times figured out a pay model. We bet on our readers, and we invested in serious journalism. Our metered paywall has worked nicely for us. We're on pace for about 1 million digital-only subscribers in the next few months. And because readers pay for our journalism, we avoid the race to the bottom, which is chasing clicks. The bottom of the internet is a really crowded place. But quality journalism is, of course, in this era, not enough. And that brings us to audience development, the art and science of reaching more readers with our journalism. Over the past year, we built a new large audience team with new people from Upworthy to the Washington Post. We even put a audience development chief on our masthead, which is our board of the newsroom. And although we've been focused on the long term, we've seen some amazing short-term benefits. Digital readership up by 1/4. Social referrals nearly doubled, and that's just in 6 months. More importantly, editors and reporters day to day are thinking about their audience and on what platforms they're consuming our journalism. So what is audience development? It's the use of tools, tactics, and strategies. It's informed by data, but ruled by editorial judgment. And there's no silver bullet. There are so many opportunities to make an impact by reaching and engaging with our audience at their digital doorstep. For example, here are some of them. How to use geo-targeting. What should an email newsletter strategy be? What should our commenting platform look like? And how should the Instagram strategy be different from WeChat? It used to be that when we published our journalism, we would just sit back and enjoy the impact. Today, the story begins when you press the publish button. This may seem overwhelming for some old school journalists, but if you stop and think about it, we've been doing audience development for a really long time. We put newspapers on trucks and drove them across America, and then handed them to boys who owned bicycles who would pedal them to the doorsteps of our readers. It's an amazing feat of humanity, and it happens all over the world. Here's what it looks like.
All around the world, home newspaper delivery is an impressive feat. In India, men on bikes can throw a newspaper right into your 5th floor walk-up.
You're watching extreme newspaper delivery.
And closer to home, the process of home delivery can be a dangerous task.
Yikes. I don't know if you can see this, how crazy this really is. This is just dangerous. Oh, to get to that little guy right there, I'll put it in this box right here.
The big point here is we need to modernize our audience development efforts. We can no longer hope that people find stories. Our stories have to find people. I'm often asked, what does this mean in real life for reporters? A few months after our report was published, I co-produced and wrote this story called Surviving an ISIS Massacre.
هذا أنا متأكد منه 100%، مو بس 100%، مليون بالمية، لأن إحنا هذول مجموعتنا اللي مشتفين وهذاك الكرفان اللي طالع من عنده شوية.
In June, ISIS militants massacred hundreds of army recruits. This is the improbable story of Ali Kazem, the only known survivor.
This is the kind of journalism we're most proud of, and I wanted to make sure it could reach the most amount of people. So we quickly assembled an audience development team across 8 departments who had never previously worked together, people from data, from social, from marketing. We produced the first ever bilingual video in Arabic and English. We created socially native media assets like trailers and special images. We targeted an international audience in their language, in their time zone, on their social networks. We secured commitments from non-traditional partners like the Young Turks on YouTube. And we identified influencers or people with a large following and told them that this has been published and they might be interested. In 3 days, Survivor blanketed the internet. It was the most streamed video of the year for the New York Times. And remember my point about the decline of the almighty homepage? 88% of our streams came from off the New York Times site. And of those 12, only 5% came from the homepage. The video performed internationally. It was more omnipresent internationally, more mobile, and more likely to attract new users internationally. Perhaps the most important thing is the long-term loyalty we're trying to build. Our Twitter account for video received a 6% spike in followers from this story alone. But you all know that journalists like to spin numbers to fit their story. When you arm journalists with numbers, they don't always know what to do with them. 88% referral traffic, what does that mean? How should I change my behavior? When we talk about analytics, it can be quite controversial in newsrooms. I'm more interested in engagement than page views. What about completion rate? How long are people watching? That's a reflection of my writing and my narrative structure. Over the past year, we've built an analytics team in the newsroom. We've upgraded tools and embedded data scientists who now sit beside journalists. This is an email from our executive editor. Data is often associated with fear. When we first started telling people about data, some of them responded, well, once we see the numbers, we'll never cover the war in Syria. So I decided to look into it. And guess what? Our readers love serious journalism. In the last half of 2013, the Times saw more than 14 million page views from the war in Syria. No clickbait there. When we first wrote this report, we didn't set out to create a roadmap on how to be innovative. We want to change the place so that it's the kind of place where innovation can always happen. We don't want to have to write another innovation report in 5 years from now. Being digital first means no longer having print at the beginning of the conversation, but at the end. Our news meetings now have print off to the side. The focus is digital readers and where they're playing. This is not just a mindset, it's also several actions. We've created a newsroom strategy team. We've prioritized the hiring of digital talent. And we're working closely, the business side and the newsroom together. Once upon a time, a newspaper editor only had to worry about this, the newspaper. But nowadays, there's so many different platforms for distributing stories, and they're changing all the time. And when you're the editor-in-chief worrying about the front page, how can you make a thoughtful decision on your archives? How do you use structured data? Focusing not on questions of journalism, but on the support systems is what's really important. And people need to do that all the time, not just once a year at a conference in beautiful Seoul. We also need to hire digital makers, not just digital decision makers. And we should recruit them the same way we recruit journalists. These people are coders and product managers. This is a quote from the Financial Times. You must change the structure of power. I love that quote. Traditionally, newsrooms and business side never spoke to each other. This is what our newsroom looked like. And let's not forget, for a really long time, this worked really well. The newsroom took care of reporting, and the business side sold advertisements. But the wall is no longer in the right place. These teams in the middle are reader-focused teams. They have one thing in common, is that they think about how to reach readers. When we started in 1851, you couldn't get the New York Times in New Jersey. But now I'm trying to reach 17-year-olds who are on YouTube and have never read a Times article. Innovation doesn't mean creating something new every day. It means changing the culture so that you're comfortable with the uncomfortable. Succeed when you fail, iterate when you succeed, and learn when you fail. The conversation in our newsroom has changed from why should I care to how can I help. All 5 of the recommendations have happened, and now we're busy professionalizing them. And we want to be ready for the next innovation, like the Apple Watch. Just a few days after the Apple Watch was introduced, they gave us a challenge. They didn't give us a watch, they gave us a challenge. Create news on the phone. We knew it wouldn't be enough just to take stories from the website and slap them on a wrist. We would have done that a few years ago, perhaps. So we put a team together of journalists, designers, and coders. And we told them to create something new, and they came up with a concept called one-sentence stories. These are short little stories designed to catch you up quickly. It turns out to be really hard to write stories on a 4-centimeter screen. And we joke in the newsroom that we really hope that Arnold Schwarzenegger never makes the news again. Anyway, the project forced us to think about users and their needs. Someone looking at this watch doesn't have very long before his or her arm gets tired. And the device is personal, so we're writing in a new and informal tone. The watch is out, the app is out, and people love it. They're sending us photos of their wrists. One reader emailed us and said, "You created an app that I didn't even know I wanted before I wanted it." Maybe that's the next frontier of journalism, predicting the future. Thank you.